And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this beautiful Monday here in Tampa, Florida. My name is Leo Santos, and I'm always joined by my amazing co-host, James. James, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty well. We have an actual USL Championship game to talk about today, and the Rowdies, along with the rest of the league, got back to it this past weekend. So that's been pretty cool. Apparently, there's some other news going on in the Tampa sports world, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little bit later as well. But yeah, how are you doing today, Leo?
I'm doing great, man. You know, like you said, USL is back. The Rowdies are back in action. We'll get to that result very, very shortly. But overall, I'm just doing great, man. And you know, just want to say welcome everybody to the RBLR Rowdies podcast, the section that focuses on Tampa Bay Rowdies here at RBLR Sports. And like you said, James, you know, Rowdies is back. USL Soccer is back, and it's crazy because I've been saying this for the past about 3 or 4 episodes that it literally feels like a month ago in which the Rowdies were getting ready for that postseason run last season. Now we're at the first game of the 2022 season. It's already here. So speaking of the first game, without further ado, the Rowdies had their first game of the season this past Sunday, and they tied 1-1 versus Birmingham Legion. Before we get to any further kind of analysis or anything, my fellow co-host James was there. James, tell us all about it, man. How was that experience like?
Yeah, so I drove up to Montgomery, Alabama, I should say, because my sister coaches at one of the local universities there, and she was able to, have us and show us around the area. And then for the game on Sunday, we drove the hour north, I think it is, to Birmingham, or whatever the distance was. We watched the game. We went back to the Airbnb, and then on Monday we had a long drive back. So it was a lot of driving, but it was well worth it to see everyone and, have a really good weekend with the family. And, of course, to incorporate some great Rowdies soccer.
That sounds amazing, bro. It's a win-win-win for everybody. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And hopefully, we could go to more Rowdies games, whether they're home or away. But, once again, the Rowdies did tie the first game 1-1 versus Birmingham Legion. Mike Watts and Devin Kerr were on the call. It was broadcast nationally on ESPN2. They did an awesome job on it. For those of you who missed it, I do know the Rowdies did play the first game already, but our last episode, we had Mike Watts on as a special guest, and we talk about the Eastern Conference. We talk about way too early predictions and more, so make sure you check that out if you haven't yet. And with the first game around, we've also have our predictions coming back around. And James, I have to say, another reason I'm feeling really happy this Tuesday is because I got this prediction right. Not only the outcome of the game, but also the score of the game. I predicted a 1-1. So did Mike Watts, and he also predicted a 6-6 draw. Didn't think that was ever going to happen. Yeah. And James, what did you predict?
I predicted a 2-2 draw. So, if they drew and they didn't even get my scoreline, then, in terms of the points here, I didn't get too much out of it. I was hoping if they, weren't going to draw 1-1 or 2-2, I should say, which is what I predicted. I was hoping the Rowdies were going to win 1-0, but it got pretty close to that, and then they gave it over to you. So I will have to up my game for the next week. That's what I know for now.
Just some inside scoop for our listeners. So the way this prediction points work is 1 point is for the correct result, so it's a win, loss, or tie, and 3 points for the correct score. And I obviously got wins on both. James only got wins on 1. So I start with 3. James starts with 1, but it's a very long season ahead of us. And one final thing before we dive into this game, we made one final signing. The mysterious center back that was all over the Rowdy social media pages has been announced. It is Robert Castellanos on loan from Nashville SC. Nashville currently plays in MLS. They're a team in the Eastern Conference. And James, to me, this is a really big deal because we snagged, a center back from Major League Soccer.
Yeah, and, this isn't just, one of the extras, I guess, in MLS. He is in the sense that, Nashville were willing to loan him out, but this is a guy who was doing very well in the USL Championship in the past, and he earned a move to MLS via that play. This is something that Forrest Lasso had done in the past, so if you think about it in those terms, we're trying to replace Forrest Lasso, so we get somebody who maybe did what he did, who's a little earlier in his career than Forrest Lasso was when he left us just this past offseason. Mm-hmm. So Not that he went to MLS this past offseason, I should clarify, but he has the potential to be a big signing for us at the back. Obviously, there's more to talk about once we get into this game when it comes to Robert Castellanos, and that is unfortunate in that sense. But if you didn't watch the game or if you don't remember it, then you will get a little bit more info as we move into our actual analysis.
Yeah, moving into our actual analysis. James, enough teasing our listeners. Let's get into it. Take it away, man. Dive into our review and our analysis of that game.
Yeah, so the first thing that I wanted to say, this was Birmingham Legion opening up a new stadium for them. It is actually Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, where the Blazers play, the Blazers of University of Alabama at Birmingham. So it was, it's a giant stadium, and Birmingham didn't quite fill it, I will say that. But at the same time, the announced attendance was over 9,000 people. So that is a great
impressive
turnout for a USL championship team. And I think that really, for them, that's something to celebrate. I hope that they can keep that going, or, maybe at least match that amount if they make it to the playoffs, probably when they make it to the playoffs, and, just keep that momentum going, because it was a really good turnout. I took some pictures and I sent it to, our chat for RBLR, and it was, really good numbers of people standing at the gate when we were trying to get in. So I liked that. Crowd was great. They had a lot of people over in the supporter section, not just on the different sides where we were. And it was all a really cool way to start the new season for me, and seeing a new city as well. So moving into the game itself, which is what everyone is actually here for, we have a starting 11 for the first time this year to go over, and I will do that now. CJ Cochran was the starting goalkeeper, threw us a loop on there. In front of him, we went with a 3-4-3 formation, and the three at the back were Aaron Guillen, Robert Castellanos, Jordan Scarlett. In front of them, Sebastian Dalgard at left wing back, Lawrence Wyke and Lewis Hilton in the middle, with Connor Antley as the right wing back, and up top, Sebastian Guenzati, Steven Dos Santos, and Jan Ekra were the three attacking players. So it was pretty good. I would say that, nobody got our predictions right in terms of the lineup. So I guess for you, Leo, me, and Dan Endonino over at Unused. Now, what does that mean after all the trash we talked, that Neil Collins gets to fire us from our positions?
Yeah, I got the call already.
Well, we'll have to get this in quickly then.
Yeah.
But the first major talking point for this game, unfortunately, was something that we hinted at very briefly: a pretty big injury to Robert Castellanos. So they were playing on a turf field, and with turf fields, sometimes there is the risk that, things aren't going to go as well there as they will on regular grass. And I think, unfortunately, what happened is a player got their ankle stuck in the turf, and stuck in their turf the way that, they were probably used to playing on grass. And then he twisted it or did something along those lines, but he had to be helped off the field after taking, a good while to even be able to stand up. And then he stood on the sideline until they could get him a stretcher off of the field itself. And at the end of the game, when everybody was, coming over to celebrate what they had accomplished and all that, shake hands, everything, Robert Castellanos was on the side in a boot, and he had crutches. So, Leo, I am not too hopeful about that. I feel like this could be, a big injury to start the season, especially when it is somebody who's supposed to replace the big man at the back, Forrest Lasso.
Yeah, I mean, you just take a flashback towards last season when Steven Dos Santos has that injury, then he's on the boot, and he took quite a long time to get back on the field. And all we go for is Castellanos doesn't take quite as long, but I do feel like whenever you see a player with the boot and crutches, it's never a good sign. They're going to spend quite some time on the sidelines. And I think what's more important is that, with last season with Dos Santos out, we had some depth. But I feel like with Castellanos out, he was the guy to take that mantle from Forrest. That was that guy to be the anchor of our defense, and off to a bad start of his Rowdies career. And I just hope for the best for him. But I want to ask you quickly, James, are you a fan of turf fields? Because I know, like you said, the grass is different. There's higher risks of playing on there. There has been professional soccer players who have not played on turf fields, like on purpose with their own request. Are you a fan of turf fields or no?
What I'll say is this, there are some places where it is much more difficult to grow grass. I don't think that's Birmingham, Alabama. But, I would say that, let's take one very quick instance. This is going to take us way out of the USL Championship. But there is a country that is eventually trying to join FIFA so that they can compete in international competitions and maybe try to qualify for a World Cup. They probably won't, but that country is Greenland. If you talk about, what could they do in Greenland to make a field, there's probably not a lot. They don't have a ton of resources coming into the country to be able to put into, the proper fertilizer to grow grass in Arctic conditions and all that kind of stuff. So you think, okay, they could probably make a good enough field if you give them the turf, like the best turf that they can get, which FIFA would probably be able to help pay for, all that kind of stuff. I can understand that situation. And, there are definitely going to be players who are going to be mad to go play there. Like if you send for the U.S. men's national team, Christian Pulisic out to play in a turf field in Greenland in, let's say 10 years down the line, maybe it is. He's already had a couple of problems with injuries. You maybe start to worry, especially 10 years down the line. But that's all very hypothetical. If we're talking about a place that is, perfectly fine for growing normal grass and growing what the players are used to playing on, then I am especially not a fan under those circumstances. Now, I know why Birmingham is playing there. This is a downtown stadium. A lot of soccer teams in America, especially, have been trying to get stadiums in downtown locales because that is where a lot of young people live, and young people seem to be the biggest demographic for soccer in the United States. So I totally get it. It's a really good stadium for them to play in, but I do prefer that teams don't play on turf. This is going to be the best thing for Birmingham, then fair enough. But that's just my 2 cents on Birmingham itself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And with all that being said, James, why don't you tell us what happened when Castellanos did suffer the injury? Like, did players get moved around? Did anyone get subbed in?
Yeah, so obviously we did not want to play for the rest of the game with 10 men down. So as you said, we did have a sub. Junior Etu came in and he made his debut for the Tampa Bay Rowdies. He moved into the midfield, and Lawrence Wyke, who was playing in that role, stepped back into the center back role. So Lawrence Wyke is a player who can play a defensive as well as the midfield role. He mostly played when they were in MLS, or when he was in MLS. They are still in MLS, and he has the capability of doing so, and I thought he did pretty well here in that role today, or I should say Sunday, obviously. And I thought that Junior Etu did pretty well in his role, as well as the more roving of the two central midfielders, because he did go on a couple of dribbles in this game. So, some of those came off, some of them didn't, but that's kind of the nature of dribbling, isn't it? So, not too much to complain about there, at least in my opinion. I would say the Rowdies seemed a little disjointed to start the game. Now, this is the first game of the season. They've been doing, only preseason games up until then, where, mostly preseason is for fitness and experimentation. Maybe it's just that they're coming off of that preseason, or there is a problem that we noticed last year. The Rowdies at certain points tend to start slowly and, they work their way into the game, but they might not come out firing on all cylinders. So I don't know, how much you have to say about that, Leo, but it's just, maybe this is the first game. Maybe it's something to be concerned about. I really don't know at this point.
Yeah. To me, you mentioned preseason, and it's like, you test tactics there and all that stuff. You prepare not only for the season, but I think more importantly for the first game. You always want to start off on the right foot. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence that we started off kind of poorly. It's because, we've seen plenty of games last season where we didn't really start off the way the Rowdies would have imagined to start a game. But then sometimes it cost us, sometimes it didn't. But it could, like you said, it could also just be a case of it's the first game. You're just trying to feel the rhythm, just trying to do your job, not really do anything too impressive or underperform. You're just trying to get your job done. So that could be a case of just playing at a comfortable level instead of taking a risk and getting more dangerous with the ball.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to hope that that is more the case than just a continuation of something that we noticed last year that was kind of
Yeah.
troubling. But moving forward into the game, luckily the Rowdies were able to string some things together, and their pressing did start to pick up a little bit. Ultimately, the pressing did lead to the first goal of the game. So Sebastian Gwen's Freddie Clayman or Kavita. It was Fanul Kavita that he won the ball off of. He actually went to ground to try and win the ball. It was, a very impressive physical display for him to do this because I ultimately thought that, the way that it went, the ref could have called a foul, but he didn't, luckily. And Sebastian Guenzati got the ball over to Jan Ekra, who goes through a little dribble, and then he cuts it back. He gets a cross off, and coming in at the far post is Sebastian Dalgard, who was able to put it home on a relatively easy shot. And, the Rowdies celebrate 1-0 early in the game. And for at least my family and me, it was the perfect time to celebrate and make all the Birmingham Legion fans in our section hate us. But it was a really good moment. And I liked it. What did you see in the goal if you were able to, get that in the context of the first half?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did watch the first goal on social media, and I felt like because I didn't really get to watch the game, I felt like the Rowdies that kind of had to build up momentum, whether they started out slow, but they kind of had to build up momentum to get to that point. Although they started off slowly, maybe a couple passes here and there, find a rhythm a little bit until they get that first goal. Because that's usually what you see in season openers. Is mainly teams don't really score within the first 5, 10. 15 minutes. It takes a while for them to really get a rhythm, to really know what their coach is asking for them in regards to tactics. And when they got that goal, just really good, like I said, really good pressing from Seba. Ekra just continuing off where he left off last season ever since that one game against the Charlotte Independence. So, he's just been continuing that form. And we've seen that. And then Sebastian Dalgard, who's someone, as we mentioned, James, that lost his spot last season, then, worked hard to earn it back. And, what a perfect way to I mean, there's more competition coming in with Jake Arman and Jake LaCava coming in too. So Sebastian Dalgard is gonna have to get on a score sheet more than he has in recent seasons, because if he wants to keep that spot, he has to prove that he can be a game changer. And there's no other better way to prove that than scoring a goal for your team.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah, that is certainly true. But he took it to heart, I would say. He knows that all this competition is going to mean that he needs to be, firing on all cylinders, obviously.
And we were mentioning
the Rowdies
about
do see out the half, and they.
Yeah, we were mentioning about Dayon Harris not that long ago about if he should start, and Sebastian Dalgard gets a goal, and just shows he has more competition, so he has to perform.
Yeah, exactly. But the Rowdies do see out the half. As I said, the second half gets started here. And then what we see with the Rowdies, unfortunately, is, they kind of tend to drop off in the second half a lot more. The intensity, I wouldn't say the intensity isn't there, because it takes a lot of intensity to defend, especially for nearly 45 minutes like they did. But, the issue that I saw was the Rowdies pressing. Really, that's what laid off in the second half. They sat back a lot more in the defensive posture. And I believe Eureka pointed this out from a source on Twitter, that the Rowdies more so in the second half essentially took up a position of 5 at the back, 3 in the midfield, and 2 up top. So Jan Ekra did drop back. That was a noticeable difference for the second half. And then, he and Junior Eto tried to push the attack forward whenever they could. But mostly it was in a defensive posture, and then, try and catch Birmingham Legion on the counter if and when they can. Mostly, though, not do that. So I spoke to Neil about this after the game, and I got what I will count as an admission that there was a break in the pressing, because I tried to word it as best I could. I said, compare your strategy for pressing between the first and the second half. Thought I was being a little wily there with that. But he described the second half pressing as possibly very tentative. So, as I said, I think that that's probably the most that Neil Collins is ever going to show his hand. But it seems like it was pretty obvious. That was something also that my dad noted when we were talking about, watching the game in the second half there. And to be fair, I do want to say you have to consider the circumstances of this game. You're obviously away to Birmingham Legion. It's not like it's a bad or a good. It's not like it is a bad team. They are a good team at this level, and they are opening a stadium in front of 9,000 plus people. They're obviously going to have a lot of momentum on their side in terms of the circumstances that everybody is dealing with. You would probably be perfectly happy to sneak away with a 1-0 win, so to speak, and they nearly did. You have to also consider how well they were doing on the defensive side. Part of the strategy of whether or not you want to maintain a defensive posture is whether or not that is working. And if you look at the statistics, it does seem that Tampa Bay was doing very well in terms of their defense. So very quickly, they limited Birmingham to very few good chances and certainly very few shots. The possession by the end of the game was 60 to 40% in favor of Birmingham. But if you look at the attacking statistics, then it goes back to Tampa Bay. So it was 9-5 in shots in our favor. And in big chances, it was actually 3-0. So if you consider that Birmingham Legion scored and they still did so without having conjured any big chances as defined by, their models and methods, then I would say, unfortunately, Marlon Santos scored one hell of a goal. But if you can limit a team to only being able to score wonder goals, most games you're going to win. And I think that Neil Collins ultimately probably got the strategies. But then the only other issue that I have with all of this is when the Rowdies did actually have the goal scored on them, and it was 1-1, that's when they stepped up the intensity. So at that point, Jake Arman, Kyle Gregg, and Jake LaCava had all come on to make their debuts for the Rowdies. And in the last 10 minutes, again, after Birmingham scored their goal from the 85th minute until the 90th plus 5 minutes, the Rowdies were just hammering Birmingham Legion. They were hammering them over and over, and you kind of wondered, what if they had played that way the whole second half? But, ifs and buts, I guess. I've been talking a while now about the second half. So, Leo, tell me more of your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, with the Rowdies, I feel like if you take your foot off the gas, and that's Yuri, Yuri, who was our valuable source, told us that he switched to a 5-3-2. If you kind of switch off and have a defensive mindset in the second half, unless you're Atletico Madrid, who literally preys on defending an entire game, holding a 1-goal lead, you're going to have a tough second half not conceding. Because if you invite pressure, if you let Birmingham, control the game, have more possession and stuff like that, you're going to give them the chance to gain momentum, to give them that belief that, like, look, we're dominating, they're sitting back. It's only a matter of time before we get a goal. And unfortunately, it came late, but they did get a goal. And that goal may have not come down to bad defending. They could have been good defending, but all it takes is just one moment for one of your defenders or one of your midfielders to switch off or not really be in that extra gear that they've been in all game. And that's something I see very common in soccer, not just USL, but, just soccer, even on a global scale. So I feel like, if you approach the second half, kind of a defensive approach, kind of, basically park the bus and invite pressure, then you shouldn't be too surprised if you concede a goal, because that's 45 minutes, and that's a very long time to just sit back. I feel like if I was the Rowdies, if you get a goal, let's go and get another one, And James, you have it here. I'm pretty sure you'll get more in depth in that in a second. But, the last 10 minutes, the Rowdies team, they find a little like the team that wanted that goal. Where was that in the prior 35 minutes in that second half? If you could have started out that way in the second half, then you could have walked away with a 2 or a third goal to add to your lead. So, with all that being said, I just think if you invite pressure, you're taking that risk of the other team giving them motivation to find a goal. And in this case, Birmingham did.
Yeah, those are all, good points to consider when you are looking at the strategy, so to speak, of taking up that defensive posture or continuing to do the press that the Rowdies have been so used to doing, especially over the past 2 years under Neil Collins. So that will do it for the analysis section. And now we're going to move into our questions here. And I know, Leo, you have a couple of questions, but I'm going to start out with one here based on the lineup that we saw. And this goes to the goalkeeping position. So in the post-game press conference, Neil Collins was asked, CJ Cochran, why was CJ Cochran the choice as opposed to Raiko Rosarena? What went into this decision? And he said that, this is all based on competition, and it's not necessarily over. Evan Loro was, the starting goalkeeper last year because he had kind of been the incumbent, and he had also at that point proven himself to be one of the best goalkeepers in the league. But we're not necessarily dealing with that this year. So who is going to be the winner? It's probably going to be the person who is best suited for whatever game that is, and that might be based on form in training. That might be based on what they're asking the goalkeeper to do in a certain game. If that's more footwork, if that's more long throws, which CJ Cochran did a number of, that might be any number of other things that you and I just don't necessarily see on the day to day. So with CJ Cochran starting, Neil Collins did say that it was going to be a battle for both him and Rico Rosarena for the rest of the season, just like it is for everybody else. But Leo, what did you think about that choice?
I've said this word before, and I think it kind of describes the overall game and including lineup. I think Neil Collins is just trying to play it safe. You go with the goalkeeper that's a veteran in this league that has a lot of experience. He's a proven goalkeeper in the USL too. So, you didn't really want to take a risk having Eros Arena there, who's only played 2 games for the Rowdies and not really know what you're going to get out of him. Although, like you said, James, Neil told you that it's based on competition. It's not really, although Cochran started this game, he's not really the for sure starter. But I do think this game specifically, Neil wanted to get off on the right foot and play it safe as starting a veteran goalkeeper, which, you can't really blame him. Like I said, Cochran is an experienced goalkeeper in this league. That's why I got out of this first game. And the reason I say that is because the lineup he put out, it definitely looked like he was trying to play it safe, put in a lineup out there that's experienced, has been in positions, where they could grind out wins or get a win. Because that lineup was very similar to how the Rowdies lined up throughout the majority of the last season and throughout the majority of the postseason. So once again, I just feel like this having Cochran in goal was mainly just, for the first game, I have a goalie that I can rely on. Moving forward, I still don't know who will be the starting goalkeeper.
Yeah, that probably sounds about right for me. And also with the defensive injury and the big issue potentially staring us down at the moment, the real question for both of us at this point, well, not really us, I suppose this is more the coaching staff, but something that we can look at certainly is what is the defense going to look like if Robert Castellanos is out for a while? Now, I did not mind when Lawrence Weick went at the back there. I thought that he did a pretty good job. But the issue is, you have to consider, what does Lawrence Weick bring when he's in the midfield role? If you take him out of that, then can you replace that role sufficiently? I thought Junior Etu did pretty well, but you have to also think again about the way that the Rowdies lined up in that very defensive posture in the second half. Now, does that come down possibly to Neil Collins thinking that Junior Etu is not exactly up to the role in the same way that Lawrence Weick is, and allowing them to continue putting on that pressing when the other team has the ball and, we're trying to win it back in a good position? Lawrence Weick is very good at that because he's got a lot of energy and he has played in defensive roles, so he knows how to defend 1v1 and try to win the ball off people. Junior Etu, I'm just not as familiar with him as Lawrence Weick, so I can't say necessarily that he is or isn't suited for that role. But, I did think he did well in certain aspects. I thought he, didn't exactly explore as many other aspects, but maybe they were going more for the defensive posture because of the circumstances as opposed to the players who are out on the field. But, the other thing is people were asking where was Timmy Mel, because Timmy Mel is a recent signing and he wasn't even on the bench this past game. And again, that was due to competition similar to Rico Rosarena. So these are all questions that, come up when we're looking at the defensive unit.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you just said, especially that point about Lawrence Weick. If you do take him out of the midfield role and you put him as a center back, you losing a very important piece of your lineup because, he really brings that energy of just running up and down the field constantly throughout 90 minutes, winning balls, playing balls in the final third. If you take him out of there, I feel like you don't really have anyone that's a like-for-like change for Lawrence Weick, and that really hurts the team. And honestly, for me, if I'm like doing rankings on who's going to take up that Castellanos place, one for me is going to be Connor Antley, 2 Lawrence Weick, and 3 Timmy Mel. The reason why I say Connor Antley is number 1 is because if you put Connor Antley in the back 3, you have players who could take up the spot that's available now. You have Leo Fernandez, Sebastian Dalgard, Jake Arman, maybe even Jake LaCava. You have Dayon Harris, who we talked about if it's preseason run. You have players who could be a like for like change or offer you something different in a better way if you do put Connor Antley in that back three, more so than if you put Lawrence Wyke in that back three. You take out something from the midfield that you can't really replace for this Rowdies team.
Yeah. So again, it's just a game of trying to find the best pieces for the best lineup overall. And also when you are considering which team you're playing, that's going to affect things too. But yeah, those are all, unfortunate considerations that come in when you lose the player that you brought in to replace the player that you just lost.
Yeah.
It is quite the situation that we are facing at the back. But hey, that's how soccer goes, isn't it?
I want to ask you, James. Now that we talked about the defense and the goalkeeping position, and like I said, I couldn't really watch the whole game. But you were there in person, so you got to experience it, in front of your face. So I want to ask you this: if we played, the whole second half, and I alluded to it earlier, if we played the whole second half the way we played the last 10 minutes, will we have seen a different result for the Rowdies?
Oh, I can only say 100% yes, that we would have seen a different result, because if you take what they did for 10 minutes and you extrapolate it to, let's say 45 minutes, let's say 50 minutes, because of some time in the first half, whatever the amount of time is, the Rowdies within that last 10-minute if you actually look at the highlights online from the USL Championship, within the last 10 minutes, the Rowdies created 2 or 3 chances that were highlight reel worthy. So beforehand, there was the goal the Rowdies scored, there was the goal Birmingham Legion scored, and maybe one or two other shots in, let's say, the first 85 minutes of the game. You get to the last 10 minutes, and the Rowdies, I think, had 3 shots that ended up in the highlights, in the highlight reel. And one of those was a tip save. One of them was Kyle Gregg off of a corner, putting it just wide. It's like the way that the Rowdies played those last 10 minutes, they would have absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind, they would have created a result that led to a goal at least once, because they almost did twice. And I think that the players who were on the field as well were taking up a lot of good positions and, applying a lot of good pressure, while they were just using all of the boundless energy that comes with being, a late game substitution. Jake LaCava already is known for the amount of energy that he brings to a game. And when he came on, he was just running straight at players as much as he could. He was trying to find any way that he could to beat people and just be a nuisance. And I think that, unfortunately, we didn't get the result that we wanted. Everybody will be aware of that. But the good thing is there is room for growth on the attacking side with the substitutions that we made. And all of those guys are going to get a lot more time in the games to come. So they are going to make differences all along the way. The other chance that I just remember was Jake Araman actually standing from roughly a position where Marlon scored for Birmingham Legion, unleashed a rocket that was just barely saved. And I think that, if he gets himself in those positions again, he's going to score some worldie the way Sebastian Dalgaard did last season. And when that happens, I will be just as ready to celebrate.
Yeah. Everything you just said is going to help and support my hot take of the week this week. So I'll keep that, suspense for our listeners, and we'll get to it very, very soon. But obviously, James, last season, we've seen the Rowdies open up the USO campaign with 5 straight wins. They were the only team to do that. It was very astonishing to see how quickly the Rowdies team, got off to a fast start with 5 straight wins. But this season they already tied the first one. They have 4 more games to go before they reach those first 5. What are the expectations you think for the amount of wins the Rowdies should have for the first 5 games? Like last season they were 5-0. This season they've already draw the first one. What are you thinking is the expectation or the amount of wins that the Rowdies should aim for the next 4 games?
Well, if I take a quick look at the first 5 games, again, because that's what we're comparing it to last year, as you said, we already have drawn the first one, so that is out. But I think the next 4 games are eminently winnable here. So we are home to Indy 11, and we have a preview coming up after our hot takes. After that, we are away to Atlanta United 2. Atlanta United 2 can be a tricky game. They certainly have been in the past, but I think it's one that we will want to go out there and win. That's a team that, they might win every now and again. You don't want to be the team that drops points against Atlanta United, is how I'll put it. Then we are at home to Hartford Athletic. Hartford we have had pretty good luck with in the past. In addition to that, it's a home game. You got to win your home games. And I think that we can do so. The next one after that is away to Oakland Roots. Oakland Roots did step it up last season, but they started very poorly. So, they're not a team that's going to be one of the best in the league, even if they ultimately got themselves into the playoffs with a very good end of season run. It is a team that we are going to want to be able to win. I'm going to say we should still expect to win the next 4 games. And then if we drop points from that, we'll assess, the reasons why.
Mm. So you're saying 4 for the next 4 games, right?
4 for 4, just like Wendy's.
4, yes. That's a very nice way to put it. I'm gonna go. 4 for 4 would be great for me, but I'll be happy with a 3 out of 4. The reason why I say that is because I do feel like of all those upcoming opponents, Hartford Athletic, although they're not the same team compared to last season, I do think they might put up a fight. Because I remember last season we played them, I think, once or twice at home. In one of those games, we did lose 1-0, and we did play a good game that game, but we still lost. So it could be one of those games where you just play good and nothing goes for you. Who knows? Like I said, I would be very happy with a 4 for 4 like Wendy's. But if it's a 3 for 4, then I'll be happy with that too. But moving on, I think our producer Yuri already knows the answer to this question. But James, who was your man of the match for the game this past Sunday?
Yeah, so for me, there were a lot of players who did very well in their roles, and there were a lot of players who did the job that they were asked to do. Essentially, they didn't necessarily excel at anything beyond their specific tasks and the responsibilities that Neil Collins gave them. There were some guys who probably needed a little more time to actually get that excelling out on the field, but I would say there was one person who was put in a very awkward position, and he still did extremely well with it. Lawrence White started in the midfield, where he was going to play the role that he has been all of last season, and then he had to step back into the center back role, and he did extremely well there. I thought that he did very well. His tackling was very good. I think he had 3 tackles on the night, as well as several interceptions. In fact, I can get you that information very quickly, but Lawrence White is going to be my man of the match for his, now that I can see it, his 7 recoveries, 1 interception, and 1 clearance, in addition to those 3 tackles that I mentioned. So, yeah, he did very well at the back, and he will be the guy that I choose as my man of the match. What about you?
James, I always go with goal scorers, man. I feel like, you don't win games unless someone scores a goal. So, I have to go with Sebastian Dalgard. I could make a case for one of those late substitutes in regards to Jake Arman and Jake LaCava, but too little amount of time to be put on the field. Maybe, who knows? Maybe next week or the week after they can make a bigger impact, and they'll be my man of the match. But for the first game of the season, I'm playing it safe, and I'm going with Seba Dalgard.
Well, I can understand that. He also had a pretty good game, according to the statistics that I saw on FOTMob. So, those are either one are good selections. And please, if you have a different man of the match, let us know when that tweet goes out. I know our producer will have that up and going. So we will move into our hot takes, and I will go first. It's a pretty quick one. It's not specifically related to the Rowdies as a team or how they did on the field, anything like that. I just kind of wish the game were a little better for TV. As someone who has gone to the game, and it was, I thought it was a very good atmosphere. At least, what my family and I did. I can't speak for everybody at Birmingham Legion's side of the stands, but it was a lot of fun, and I just wish that that were more evident on the TV. I think that it's probably hard to show everyone watching from home that the stands are still very full, even if they're not, 40,000, whatever the stadium actually fits full. It was a big crowd for the game that it is, and in the league that it is. I think that it was really cool. I also think that, it's apparently there was a problem with the giant shadow coming from the building where, all the boxes are and the cameras and all that stuff. So that was something that I was waiting for the shadow to come across the field and cover my face, and I didn't have to have several layers of clothing to keep me from getting sunburnt. But yeah, a 1-1 draw, as much as it was perfectly good for me. I think that doesn't unfortunately make for the most compelling television. So if I could have made that case to Neil Collins, I would have used it as a plea for him to go out and apply more pressing and try to win the ball in high positions and get more chances, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everything you just said there, James. I know recently for in regards to TV for the USL, hasn't really been the best. There's sometimes with the camera, replays aren't really that well and stuff like that. But I just feel like if the crowd is there, then the TV quality should be there as well, especially if you're on nationwide TV in regards to ESPN or ESPN2, and even on ESPN Plus. But my hot take of the week is, and I've alluded to it earlier, and James, you made a great point earlier in the episode, and you helped supported my hot take claim of the week, and that's it. And my hot take is that Neil needs to not play it safe and start the players at the Rowdy side in the offseason. When the lineup first came out, the first question, besides CJ Cochran, the first question that I had was, why are there why are any of our new signings starting? Because we talked highly about Jake Arman and Jake LaCava. These are two players that I expected at least one of them to start, and that was Jake Arman. But Jake LaCava, a lot of Rowdies fans are riding the train right now of the LaCava train because he's been in excellent preseason, and I'm pretty sure in training as well. So I was kind of surprised when I didn't see either of these two players starting. And then from what I've seen in regards to highlights and what I was able to watch of the game, it looked like Neil put out a team that could kind of assure him at least a point going back home. And then, James, you talk about the last 10 minutes where you see Jake LaCava running at players, and the players that got subbed in, they were the ones really making the impact towards the last 10 minutes. And it's like, well, if you had that from the first minute to the last, you would have won. And you said, James, if the Rowdies played that first 10 minutes just for the whole second half, they would have won. So imagine if you had that for both halves of the game, it would have been a different story. So I think that Neil, although he seems like a guy who trusts his players that were there before the new signings, because they were there in that postseason run, they were there for the majority of the season. I do think you signed those new players for a reason. You should start them. You should see what they can offer you. And I'm pretty sure what they offer you can be wins, can be goals, it can be points. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. So that's my hot take of the week. I don't know if you agree with that, James, or not, or if you think I'm totally off of my analysis or anything like that.
No, I think, that they're brought in for a reason. So I think the only issue is just that it's so early in the season. He, as you said, he's going to go with the guys that he knows a lot more, and then they will probably have to work their way in for the rest of the month, hopefully the rest of the season as it comes. But that will be good for our hot takes. We're going to do the shortest standings update that you guys have probably ever heard. This is the first standings update of the year, so it obviously doesn't mean a ton at this point. But the Rowdies are 7th in the Eastern Conference, which means they are right behind Birmingham Legion by, not any points or anything, but I think that there are probably other tiebreakers that go into it, such as the amount of yellow cards accumulated, or maybe they're even going by alphabetical order at that point. Who is to say? But if you also look at Indy 11, our opponent for next week, they are in 12th of 14 in the East, and that leads us into our home opener preview. This week coming up will be the Rowdies home opener, and we are hosting Indy 11. It is going to be Mark Lowry, their coach, his first year in Indianapolis, I should say, after doing pretty well with El Paso Locomotive. And they have some players that came in and some players who came out. But Leo, you did watch the Indy 11 game, so maybe you can give us a bit more of an update than I could, and I'll have some questions to go off of what you tell us here.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that I didn't really pay attention too much to Indy 11 last season, so I can't really give too much input on the players that they lost. But the players that they did receive this season, Jerome, Brown, Aguilera, Briggs, Powder, Rebion, and Pino, I believe 2 or 3 of them have MLS experience. So whenever you could bring a player that has MLS experience to your team, that's always a good sign. And you talk about Mike Lowry, he's someone that had a successful spell with El Paso. He took them to the playoffs. What more can you ask for? But in regards to what I've seen against Loudoun United, they did not win that game, James. If you would have asked me which game I prefer to watch over this past USL weekend, I could bet you that Indy 11 versus Loudoun United would not be at the top of my list. They did lose to Loudoun United. 1-0. Who, in case for those of you who don't remember, Loudoun United was the worst team in USL last season. One thing I will say is that the reason why I might cut some slack for Indy 11 is that, one, they were without their top goal scorer last season, Manuel Ortega. He was out because of injury. And their top assist last season, Yoji Garcia, he was out because of injury as well. I'm not sure when they'll be back. I don't know if they'll be fit enough for the Rowdies game, coming this Saturday. But in regards to their play, they from what I've seen, they were a team that held a high line. And for fans who followed El Paso, it's very similar to what Mark Lowry is trying to do with Indy 11 to what he did with El Paso. He was holding a very high line. They did start out in a 4-2-3-1 formation, but whenever they would press teams, the number 10 will kind of act as a second number 9 and transition to a 4-4-2 whenever pressing. But the reason why I think that was their own downfall is because Loudoun United, a team full of youngsters from the DC United MLS team, they quickly found out how much of a high line Indy was trying to play. So really, throughout the majority of the game, you seeing crosses coming in from Loudoun's own half, or getting a little bit inside Indy's half and putting in crosses, not only, towards the main number 9, but putting in crosses that were specifically meant for the person crushing at the back post. So that could be a left winger, a right winger. And they found that to really work for them. And it looked like Indy 11 didn't really know how to react to it. And because, the stats in regards to possession showed that Loudoun United had way more possession than Indy 11. And I think it was something around like 63 to 37%, in favor for Indy 11. So in favor to Loudoun United, I'm sorry. So it shows how Indy 11, one, you play a high line, you got to be safe with that. You got to know how to defend when playing a high line. And two, if you're playing a high line and you let the other team, boss around with possession, to me, I don't think that's the best way to approach a soccer game. I feel like you're in for a long day. I feel like it's a recipe for disaster because most teams who do play with the high line is because their midfielders and attackers have possession. They can create great things. I did not really see that from any of the players from Indy 11. Even some of the new signings that they brought in, I didn't really see that kind of spark that I feel like Indy 11 fans would have hoped for. But with all that being said, if I'm a Rowdies fan and I watch this game, all I want from a Rowdies perspective is for Tampa Bay to play with pace and finish off your chances in the final third. Because once those crosses come from either whoever's playing the wingback positions or the winger positions, you're hoping someone like Dos Santos or Gonzalez gets to the end of it, or one of your wingbacks to get the end of it. So with all that being said, Indy 11 for me, I feel like they're still trying to learn how their head coach wants them to play, and they're still trying to adapt to that, defending with the high line and also pressing at the same time, which kind of don't really make too much sense to me.
Now, with their, key additions and I guess their key subtractions from last season, Indy 11 lost all of the goalkeepers that they had played at different times over the season, so they were replaced. And they also brought in a couple of defenders from El Paso that Mark Lowry was used to playing with. So like Mishak Jerome and Brian Rebellon, they came in to kind of shore up the back line. And how do you think that they did at shoring up the back line? Obviously, you said that they had some problems with the high line that they were playing during this pressing.
To me, it looked like those two players specifically looked like they knew what their roles were, but they're not the whole defense. You got other two players who are also defending there with you. So I feel like if you're not all the defense is on the same page, and we've seen this even with the Rowdies, and not everyone's on the same page, it could cost you a goal or goals. And in this case, it cost them one goal because it seemed like when they were playing that high line, they weren't really lined up consistently. You've seen sometimes one defender was pushed too low or one defender was pushed too high. And when that happens, it kind of gets everyone out of sync, and that allows certain opposing players to have an onside position and sneak in behind that back line. And there was about one or two times I've seen Loudoun United, have that towards their advantage, to where the back line didn't seem to be on the same page, and they took advantage of it. And at the end of the day, they get the 1-0 win. But I feel like when you face a stronger opponent like the Rowdies, or you go against the Western Conference, you go against Orange County or Phoenix Rising, those teams will sniff that out within the first 10, 15 minutes. So if I was Indy, I would want to shore that up quickly, get everyone on the same page as fast as possible, or else, teams like the Rowdies will hurt you.
Gotcha. Well, I think that is a solid preview for what we can look to expect out of this Indy 11 team. And with that, we are going to move into our predicts for this game. Now, Leo, you are sitting on 3 points, so I've either got to come out of the gate flying here, or I'm going to start to really fall behind. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think Indy 11 pulls it together just yet. I think that the Rowdies are going to be a little bit miffed that they lost these points against Birmingham Legion when they could have got all three. I'm going to come out of the gate on this prediction, and I'm going to go 4-1 to the bleeping Lads.
4-1. I did forgot to mention this. Another defensive issue, which is a plus for the Rowdies. Their starting right back, Alexander McQueen, did receive a red card that game, so he will be suspended. So with all that being said, the Indy 11s without their top goal scorer from last season, their top assist player from last season, who was a starting left back, and now their starting right back is out due to suspension. All good signs for the Rowdies, all terrible signs for Indy 11. I'm going to go for a win, James, same here. But the scoreline, I'm going to go for a 3-0 win for the Rowdies. I don't think they'll concede. I do think that they'll punish Indy 11 by 3 goals.
3-0 is also a good scoreline. I would not mind that. From a Rowdies perspective, from my own perspective, I might be just the littlest bit ticked there, but that's fine. I will let you take the 3-0.
But thank you for that, James. And I think that's going to do it for our preview. And we're going to go to our One More Thing segment. As always, listeners, liking and subscribing is always free. Whenever it does cost $100 per listen, take that up with our producer, Yuri. Now with James and I, we have no control over that. But if you need some new threads, you can support this podcast by heading over to our own shop. The link is shop.rblrsports.com. Please check it out. We have plenty of designs that we have people behind the scenes that are making. The link is in the description wherever you get your podcast from. And remember to use a promo code COYR for 10% off your purchase. Check out that new clothes. Check out the new threads. You don't want to miss out. And also want to say, I'm speaking on James' behalf as well as mine, Mike Watts and Devin Kerr did an amazing job, like they always do. And also, James, I don't know if you know, but Devin Kerr was on that Indy 11 call against Loudoun United, and he does a fantastic job with his color commentary and his analysis in game. He's just, he's really spot on with everything he does. He makes the game more enjoyable and more clear for fans watching at home. And as far as the upcoming game this Saturday, I will be attending to the game. I'll be taking my girlfriend with me, to watch the game this Saturday. Hopefully to have an enjoyable experience. James, will you be going?
I will also be going. I have got at least 4 tickets for my family members coming again, and I'm trying to see if even more of them can make it. But yeah, we are all going to be, bringing the Knowleses down again.
Yeah, the more the merrier, man. But yeah, as James said, everyone, if you can, please come out to the game this weekend at Outlang. It's been too long. I know season ticket holders got to be back inside the stadium quicker than single tickets people. But if you could get a ticket, snag one up, go to Outlang this weekend. And if you see James and I, or if our producer Yuri shows up, say hi to either one of us or all of us if you have the time. We'll be happy to say hi to you as well. But in other Tampa Bay sports news, in case you missed it, unless you don't have a phone or social media, I don't know how you missed this. But in case you missed it, Tom Brady is officially back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Retirement did not last long for him. James, what was your reaction when you first seen this, man? I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought I was reading a fake Twitter account of Tom Brady with a random verified check mark next to his name, man.
The funniest thing was we walked out of the stadium and we were waiting to, determine what we need to do next, like in terms of getting our cars together. Do we want to get food? All that good stuff. Then the next thing, my sister is holding up her phone and kind of bouncing around and making sure that everybody saw the tweet. And there was some concern, wait, does that mean he's coming back to the Bucs? Does it not? All this stuff. And then when everybody found out what it all meant, I think that just made the whole weekend even brighter after, a very good time to begin with.
I'll tell you, man, I've never had a more exciting Sunday like that in a long time. So, happy Tom Brady is back with the Bucs. And if you want to get further analysis and what it means for the Bucs to have Tampa Tom back at Ray J, make sure to check out the RBLR Bucs podcast here at RBLR Sports, the same place where you get your podcast, the same place where you listen to our Rowdy section. You can find the Bucs section there as well. That's all for me. James, is there anything you want to say? Anything you want to let our listeners know before we get out of here?
No, the other thing, while we're plugging the rest of the sections of the RBLR Sports podcast, obviously we do cover the Lightning, the Rays, the Rowdies, and the Bucks, but there's one more team that has been coming along on the RBLR Sports feed, and that is the Bandits. So I don't know if we're the only people covering the Bandits this, frequently, but I feel like we are definitely the best ones doing it. So please check all of us out. And I will shout out our producer, Eureka, for that one. I had really no idea anything about the Tampa Bay Bandits, but as it happened, I listened to a couple of those episodes in our feed, and we went to the stadium, Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, where all of those USFL games are going to be played. And everybody was like, what the hell is the USFL? Who are these Birmingham Stallions and all this stuff? And I was actually the person, despite not knowing a lot about American football, I was the person who explained everything to them. And I said, where did I find that? Oh, I found it at RBLR Bandits. So yeah, please check us out for all of your Tampa Bay sports coverage.
Yeah, James, what a way to market our brand, bro. I'm really proud of you for that. But yeah, don't forget, listeners, as James was saying, follow us on Twitter at RBLR Sports. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you want to interact with James or myself, I'm on Twitter at @I'm_Leo_Santos. James, where can these people find you?
I am at RBLR James K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you have any questions, either for the Rowdies or any of the other sections we mentioned, just plug the hashtag Ask RBLR, and we'll get your questions in, and we'll answer them while we're recording our shows. And don't forget, listeners, like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on the Spotify and our iHeartRadio app, Apple, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and all other major podcast platforms. With all that being said, I hope we have a happy Saturday. I still have Sunday in my head because of Tom Brady coming back. But with all that being said, man, come on, you Rowdies. Let's go, Rowdies.
Before our home opener, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.